Thank you, everybody, for listening in to another Her Wild Outdoors episode. This is a special one. I'm in Montana, and we are recording during the Montana Mule Hunt with a couple of really special people. I've got Jessica, Sam, and Keegan, and we are all sitting around here kind of planning our next move for this afternoon and chit-chatting about what has been going on this past week. So thanks, guys, for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we started planning this back in March. Actually, Jessica, we kind of started planning this.
It's been a while.
Because the first time I had you on the Miss Pursuit podcast, you were like, you need to come out here and hunt.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we'll do that. And you probably thought, yeah, right.
It was kind of one of those things where, like, everybody I talk to about it, I'm like, come hunt. And they're like, I'll definitely do that. And then we never speak to each other again. And so it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, oh, okay.
I don't, when I say yes, you better be ready for me to show up on your doorstep.
I love it.
So
show up on my doorstep anytime, maybe.
I think it was, we ended up doing the Hunter versus Huntress podcast on the Miss Pursuit podcast, and it kind of came up again, and that was kind of right around the time where we started chit-chatting about well, when is the draw, and when do I put stuff in, when do we start planning for this?
Yep.
And I was like, okay, done.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yep, and that was the biggest thing, too, is all of a sudden in, the good old Instagram DMs, I've got you in there asking me, okay, well, where do I apply? How much is it? What are the deets? I'm like, okay, all right, here they are. And that's kind of where it took off from.
And we kind of pulled in to the Miss Pursuit group that we were part of. And Sam, you jumped on in that part. And it was exciting to start seeing this start pulling through. Yeah. We had a couple of other gals that were coming. And due to COVID and honestly, country borders. Chelsea was supposed to join us from Canada, and that it did not work out for that. And some Texas gals that it ended up not working out for. But I think overall, like, I'm just glad that we got something ironed out.
Yeah. I'm glad that you guys could make it for sure.
And we're missing those. We're missing the other gals here, but we are working hard here. And Sam, you and I touched base because neither one of us wanted to fly.
Right.
And neither one of us wanted to drive that far by ourselves. Yeah. Yeah, because you were coming from Michigan. I was coming from Tennessee. And we just had to find a little happy medium place to meet up, and
it all worked out.
It was a long
drive.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm impressed. Keegan and I drove, Keegan drove to Oregon and I sat in the passenger seat. And that was a long drive. I'm not a good traveler. I'm really not. I've been on a plane like once. I
think our excitement helped. Her and I didn't really sleep much in the car either, so it was a long drive.
Yeah, I think
exhausted.
It was. We drove. We both met in Indiana and then drove all night Friday night and all day Saturday. And then thank you, Carrie of Azire Camo. She let us bunk with her in Wyoming and fed us and treated us very well before we got back on the road on Sunday and got here.
And we had little hints of her all the way throughout the week through Bighorn sheep, too.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Oh, it was so good. We made tacos, and we all love tacos.
Oh, yeah. What did we... Oh, and spaghetti. Made some spaghetti. That was my first time having Bighorn sheep.
It was delicious.
Any sheep, really, and it was fantastic.
Delicious.
So thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Big shout out for sending us with treats.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, so we got here on Sunday evening and kind of just spent the time. I think this is an important part of when you're meeting people that you've met on Instagram or any kind of social media and you've never met before, having that kind of meet and greet time of, hey, this is, you kind of need to mesh personalities a little bit.
And you know how I am. Like, I like to give people guff every opportunity I get. And some people don't take it very well. So I'm glad that I have Amy and Sam here who can...
Take a dish.
Take and dish. I love it. I love it.
And we got to meet your family, and Keegan, we had never really, other than spitting back and forth on Instagram for recipes.
Yeah, just a few conversations back and forth. Like, I'd send a message about a post you put up, or ask you for recipes because I had no idea what to do, or something like that. But yeah, we didn't really talk a ton. Jess was really more the spearhead of it.
Yeah.
And when she mentioned to me, she's like, yeah, hey, I want to invite all these gals out to hunt. I'm like, all right, bring it on. Let's do it. It'll be fun.
It has been, your hospitality, both of you have really taken care of us and created a situation where I hope that we haven't been like a complete... Like, I don't want to use the word burden because I know we haven't been a burden.
No, not at all.
We need to be able to give as much as
Right, and you guys have done just being here. Like I said, I never get to hunt with other women. I get to hunt with my mom and my sister every now and then, but my sister doesn't entirely enjoy some of the things I drag her through. The last time I did that, she was a little upset with me. So... And my mom, it's usually her and my dad go out and I let them have their time. And so I never get to hunt with other women. So it's great to actually have some other women that I can relate to out.
And it's not that, like, hunting with men and hunting with women, it's not that there are... Like, we're not talking the negatives of it. There's just different sides of it that create... I don't know if it's comfort or if it's ease or if it's...
There's just different conversations that you can have with different groups, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's nice to be able to have those different conversations.
Because even this week we've been out, and Keegan, you've been with us for the most part, but there have been a couple of times where we've been on our own coming back or going out.
Right, yeah.
And that has been, I would say there isn't much of a difference in it except conversation.
Yeah. I would say so.
We've still been kicking ass on the mountain and we've still been getting up and pushing as hard as we can.
Yeah.
You guys have done a really good job of introducing two East Coasters to some West Coast.
You guys did so
You guys did awesome.
I'm so proud of you. You did great.
You guys held your own for sure.
The first day, I was like... Jess, I think you're trying to kill us.
I did. I was like, what did we get into? But
it all worked itself out. You're here. You're
breathing.
Breathing. You're alive. There's nobody had to go to the ER at any point.
Yeah. When I first started hunting with Jess, the amount of times I would look back on hunts we did together, and it's like, wow. I can't believe I survived that, but I did, so that's a plus.
I'm chubby, but I'm mighty, let me tell you.
Oh, you can cover ground for sure.
It is for sure. That is for sure.
I had to fast-paced walk with Jess. I'm like, how is she going this fast?
She walks with a purpose
everywhere. She absolutely does.
And I'm double timing it behind all of y'all.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that Amy and I had talked about is because I'm used to hunting with Keegan and my dad, who have much longer legs than I do. The little chubby one in the back, you know. And so for me, it's like, Dad, your legs are so much longer than mine. I have to take 2 steps for every one of yours. So technically speaking, you know, I'm walking double, right?
Yeah.
Because
I have definitely was.
Oh yeah. So I feel that. I know how that goes, and it's not fun. And I think that being in the back too can have a big impact on the mental part of things, because being in the front, you get to decide where we're going, at what pace we're going, all that kind of stuff. And so you get the opportunity to look around, or when you're behind that person or even in the back, you don't have anything really pushing you and driving you.
Yeah.
You just have to follow.
Yeah.
And that can be kind of tough mentally to just put your head down and just walk where the other people are walking, you know?
Yeah, there were definitely a couple of times where we were going up a huge ridge, like getting up and over, and I was walking, going, okay, they're gonna pause in just a second. And the mental part of it to me was, okay, do I pause here because I know they're going to keep going when I get there? Or do I get up to them and pause for just half a second and then we go again?
Yeah, and that's something that I'm still kind of figuring out, because when I hunt with my dad, I always, like when I was younger, when I was that 10 years old, I would finally get up to my dad, and right as I stopped, my dad would take off on another beeline. And I'm like, I'm going to take my trekking pole and throw it between your legs and watch you fall on your face, Dad. This is ridiculous. Yeah, and so I have to remind myself, like, just because I'm good, I'm ready, doesn't mean everybody else is. And that's a really easy way to burn people out when they're behind you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I thought you did a great job. There were multiple times where I was like, okay, I just, what was it? One day you were like, we can have lunch way up there.
Yeah.
And food is a motivator for me. So we just kept moving forward and forward and forward, up, 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 up. And I just kept going. Food is on the other side of this. Food is at the top. Food is at the top. And so you kind of have to pick what your push is for.
Right.
And it might be something different within each minute.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think it helps too with being in a group, because you kind of drive yourself or drive together.
Each other.
Yeah. Whereas like me personally, when I'm hunting by myself, I won't go near as far as when I'm hunting with Jess or her dad or anybody else.
Yeah. And that's the same thing for me. I'm so used to hunting with my dad, and he decides when we get up, where we go, how far we go, and where we have lunch and all those kind of things. Now that I'm older, I have an impact on that stuff, but I'm used to that. So getting up and motivating myself, not having my dad breathe down my neck and go, if you don't get up right now, I'm going to leave you.
Yeah.
Like, not having that has been kind of a bit of a curve for me, too. So, that first day, I'm like, I got to do it. I got to get up and get going down the trail.
You had us motivating. Are you ready to go? Are you ready to go?
Are you ready? Are you ready? You ready?
Not so much this morning.
Yeah, this morning was definitely a tougher one.
We did an accidental long walk last night.
Yeah.
So
That's
was
how it goes.
Yeah.
the usual. But
Yeah. Well, if we go back, so let's just talk really quick, because we, for the first couple of days, were hunting migratory mule deer in the mountains. We had some y'all have had some, and I'm putting this in quotations because I'm from the East, warmer weather. To you guys, it's warm. To us, it was a little chilly when we first got here. But with that warmer weather, you have talked to us about how the migration of these deer are disrupted by that.
Right. So with the migratory deer, you need the weather. And for a lot of deer, it's not necessarily cold weather, because it can be 40 below, but if there's no snow on the ground, they can still graze. So they are back in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, and a lot of those big mature bucks, they're going to stay there until they absolutely cannot. Some of them just don't come out. They'd rather winter kill back there than come out here and see all of our ugly bugs. So they usually, what happens is you'll get a bit of snow, like a good amount of snow, and then when that thaws a little bit on top and then refreezes, you get that, that crunchy snow on top that you just fall through, and that really hurts their dew claws when they're walking through it. That's what those are called, right?
Yeah.
And it hurts when they're walking through it, and they don't like walking through it any more than we do. And so that's usually what pushes the migration for elk and mule deer.
It's before that happens. It's like that in between of snow falling and...
Right. It's because it's still warming up to get that crust, but there's still snow. It's coming and it's getting colder, and they have to graze. They have to be up grazing to keep themselves warm. And so a lot of those deer, it's not, oh, we got a snowstorm, we're going to come out. It's, okay, we got a snowstorm, now it has to only melt a little bit on top, and then maybe get more snow, more cold weather, and then they'll start migrating. And they won't just migrate out. They're going to slowly, they're going to stay as far back as they can for as long as they can. So having this warm weather has not been conducive to migratory deer. Some are kind of on, their body clock, where they're like, yeah, it's about that time, but that's going to be a lot of the does and the immature bucks that are coming out. Those big, mature mountain mule deer are going to be like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So,
and one thing that you spoke about was you can't scout for those deer.
right. Yeah,
No.
you can guess where they're going to come through, but that's about all you can do, because Keegan and I, we had talked about scouting and doing a bunch of scouting for it, but it's like, okay, we can go walk somewhere, and if we don't see something, that doesn't mean there's not going to be anything in there tomorrow,
Right.
or the next day, or so on and so forth. So it's really hard to scout with them. You can scout over years of going, deer migrate through here and here, and creating like a little map for yourself. And that's about all you can do to actually scout.
Yeah, it's just burning boot leather over the course of several years, and then, when hunting season comes, go, okay, historically, they're in here. So let's go check this spot out.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Honestly,
so
that was the first day that we put in close to 10 miles that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up and down and up and down. And that was a long day.
It was.
It was, we timed things perfectly, I think, with getting back kind of at the same time, because that was, we separated halfway through the day.
Yep.
But it was mainly, where are they? Are we seeing sign? And we didn't see a lot of sign.
No, a lot of it was from a couple days ago, and we talked about when those deer, when they move through, they move through. They're not going to mosey. They're not going to feed very much. They're not going to bed down. When they're moving, they're moving. And if you don't have the weather where they have to feed all day and all night, they're just going to go through in the cover of darkness, and that's going to be that. And we experienced that. And so that makes it very difficult to hunt them without right weather.
We also got the winds picked up the next day. We got snow.
Yep.
Which was beautiful, but when you can't see past a certain distance, then you're not going to get anywhere with that.
Right, and when you have snow coming in sideways and you're trying to walk up a drainage and the snow's pelting you in the eyes, pelting you in the face, your feet are cold, your hands are cold, your ears are cold, your nose cold, everything's just cold. It's one of those things where if I don't want to do it,
they're not.
The deer are just gonna bed out somewhere where they're out of the wind, and they're gonna stay right there. Just
until
like I don't want to get out of my pickup at the trailhead, they're not gonna want to get out of their beds.
Yeah. And that's, I think that day we tried our best, and we kind of went and looked at some other places, and we did get out there, and
we stayed fairly mobile on that second day.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where I'm a full and firm believer that you gotta hunt the way that it's going to produce. So the first day we hiked our little butts off, and the second day we did more of checking out as many different spots as we could on those east facing slopes where they're out of the wind, east and south facing slopes where they're out of the wind, they can bed up. And we got out the spotting scope and we got out our binos, and we just took the time and we drove to different areas and just did that. And I mean, we got some laughs.
We did. We learned a lot about each other that day. I think you put 4 people into a vehicle, and your goals are very similar, but the way that you get to those goals are a little bit different for each person. You find out a lot about personality and character.
Yeah, I would say so. I feel like now I can categorize.
Whenever you're with a group anyways, you're going to have inside jokes. You're going to have things that only happen to you as a group. I would like to chit chat just a little bit because Sam, you made all of us crack up.
Sam's a character, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Sam really is a character.
We were in tears from laughing a few times, I swear.
Oh, shoot.
She's so focused and so passionate and very just like this is on her mind.
Yeah. This is what we're doing.
Very goal oriented.
And not only is it on her mind, but it's also all over her face.
Yeah. You can't mistake her drive.
Serious face.
It's your thinking face.
That's what she says. That's what she says. For those of you who know what an RBF is, that's what I say.
That's what my thinking face is.
I'll look back and I will propose something to Amy and Sam's just looking at me with this thinking face. And I'm like, why is Sam mad at me? Why is she glaring at me right now? What did I do? Okay, maybe not. Maybe we shouldn't do that.
So the snow started letting up just a little bit. And we had a place that we were going to go to. And by that point in time, you can check tracks. You can see fresh sign.
Right.
All of those things are happening. So we had a spot that we wanted to go look at. But on the way, Sam's focusing on, where these places open up looking for an opportunity.
Right. And, I mean, as we should be doing, but Sam was definitely on top of it, making sure we were all doing our jobs. We just had to put our heads down and say, yes, ma'am.
Yes. So at one point we hear, stop the truck. Stop the truck. Stop the truck. There's deer. And she is already out of the vehicle before it comes to a complete stop, ready to get outside of the road where she needs to be in order to take a shot, if possible. And she yells back,
get me a range. I saw antlers.
And we're all just, Keegan's trying to stop the truck as safe as possible on snow, on packed snow, and Jess is
with the rangefinder
frantically getting a
rangefinder. Yes, ma'am.
And Sam's out of the truck somewhere. Like she's gone.
Yeah. And let me tell you, when I pulled up that rangefinder, I gave her range. But I was looking, and there were no antlers.
Sometimes you see sticks. Sometimes you see things that you hope to see.
Well, our theory is that the buck was in there chasing his does, and he decided that when we came to an absolute halt, that he just needed to lay down flat on his side. Right,
looked like a rock. Yeah.
Yep, and we missed him.
Yeah,
we couldn't find him. Yeah. And let me tell you, I was terrified to tell Sam that I didn't see any antlers. Absolutely terrified.
We didn't want to crush your soul.
He was just so sure. I'm doing double takes, going, maybe they are there.
Yeah.
But there was, when we did get out and we did hike in to where our plan was to search, we came across a doe that was looking a little fresh, looking back, looking at something behind her, and all of a sudden a buck parked out.
Yeah. At that point, we knew. We're like, oh, the way she was looking behind her, the way her body language was, I'm like, there is a buck down there.
Yeah, she's not looking for a fawn behind her to catch up. There's something down there.
And we had seen him the first day.
Yep. Right off the bat.
Yep. And didn't have a shot. There was we heard him wrestling, but it was in timber that there was just no shot for. So we weren't surprised when we saw him come up behind her, but it was still, get down, get ready, get all of this.
I mean, at this point, this is the only only buck we had really seen. Like, this was the only
with an opportunity.
deer.
Yeah. Opportunity, yeah.
And so at that point, it was just difficult because when you haven't hunted with people, you don't know what their checklist is when they're getting ready. And so you're trying to conform to each other's checklist in this split-second opportunity. And so in the point we were at, it was across a riverbed, and he was up on that ridge with that doe, and getting set up was remotely impossible. You have 6 inches of fresh snow. Getting laid down, prone, or anything like that, it's not fast enough.
You have such little time.
Right.
And that window of opportunity between the timber and
with him moving fast, and following that doe as fast as he was.
Right.
Well, and before we jumped
him, I mean,
he didn't stop.
Well, and before we jumped him too, we were hunting some pretty thick timber.
Really slow,
and so
quiet.
We were moving through there. It was like, all right, hey, drop your scope powers down to the lowest setting you can, just in case something comes up. That's what I
told Sam and Amy. Is I'm like, turn down your scopes all the way, because with hunting with my little brothers and my dad hunting with me, when you hunt that timber, there's been times where your scope is set for those long shots, those longer shots, and you're not expecting to try to find something at 40 to 60 yards of timber.
Right.
And so I told you guys, turn down your scope. And you did. You turned down your scope. But at that time, we're still in the timber. And all of a sudden, we hear this deer jump out of its bed. And I got a glimpse of it. You see the big neck. And just the way that deer was acting, I'm like, that's got to be a buck. And so we chased off after it. And got to the break in the trees, and he was across with that doe. And we don't 100% know if that was the same deer or not. It's hard to say, but
how far was it at that point?
It was
175.
Yeah,
176 is what we got at the range.
So not where we were on the lower, on our scopes.
He'd gone. We were on one side of that riverbed, and he was up on the face of the opposite side,
heading up.
Heading up.
All of a sudden, then you have a terrain change that just happened like that, just quick, and you don't have time to sit there and make the adjustments that you need to make. So that was another thing that we ran into, is Sam's scope was turned all the way down.
So by the time I got a bullet chambered and got him in my sight, he was on that doe so fast that he kind of went back off into the timber on that ridge. So we never even got
by the time she was on the gun in the scope, all you could see was his hindquarters going into the timber. And that was that. I mean, once they go up into that timber,
I mean, we tried going around hoping that he would come back down. And
we went to a little mouth of a drainage where they were going towards, where that doe was going towards, and we were hoping that doe was going to hit that drainage and just come back down, because we knew that was the buck from the day before. And obviously he was in that area. So I didn't see him going up into that timber and just leaving. So
we did on our way in and on our way out, saw fresh sign, lots of tracks, made a plan that evening that we would go back to that spot in the morning and just prayed that they wouldn't migrate out.
Right.
And that's the risk, is that overnight,
just because something's there one day doesn't mean it's going to be there the next.
The sky's cleared. It was a nice night. It was before it got crunchy. Like, it was just all of that. So when we went in the next morning, we found bedding that could have been from earlier that evening, but it was probably during the snowstorm from the day before, and lots of tracks heading out.
Heading up the drainage where their migratory route is. And after a while of putting that all together and walking through that, the night before we had seen 6 does alone while we were walking in, and the next morning we didn't see a single doe. We didn't hear any crunching on leaves or twigs breaking or anything like that.
It was still.
And so we got to right where that timber starts to end, and you go up the canyon, and there's just every every fresh set of tracks is headed the wrong way. So that to me was, we haven't seen any deer, we haven't heard anything, and we haven't even heard anything bust out. They probably migrated. That's when I would have done it if I was a migratory mule deer.
Yeah.
It's not cold enough that I had to feed all night. I would have just been, look, it's dark. Let's go. Let's get out of here. Somebody knows we're here. Let's go.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it goes. It was a fun 3 days of being up there and trying really hard to get on deer. And we kind of made a decision at that point to come back to hunt some coolies. And yesterday we did that.
We did, Luckily, we have some really, really good chunks of state and public land out here to go hunt where the coolies are coming out of those river bottoms. And so that was kind of my plan. But the difficult part is before season, I had a plan in my head where I'm like, okay, we'll go up to the mountains, we'll do some hunting up there, and if we can't find anything up there, we'll go to this chunk of block management. And you can always find deer in there. You can always find bucks. You can always find something. And usually nice bucks, too. And so that was my game plan. And obviously that game plan went down the drain pretty quickly because that block management vanished because he got bought out, basically. I guess is what you would call it. But
explain to people really quick what block management is for those who aren't familiar with it.
So the way block management works is a landowner can put their land into the program, which makes it accessible to the public. And there's sign-in boxes. So what the public does is, if I'm going to hunt it, I go to one of the sign-in boxes before I hunt it. And I sign in. I simply put, my name, my address, all that kind of information, and the vehicle I'm driving and that type of thing, and put it back in the box. And when you do that, the landowner gets an incentive. So I think it's like $1 per slip, per person that signs into it. So over the hunting season, that adds up pretty quickly. But what happened with this one is it wasn't enough. It just wasn't quite enough. But that's the way that block management works, is the land that the ranchers or farmers aren't using, they can put in that block management and make a little money off of it.
So it's a, if you're talking, and we don't want to badmouth outfitters by any form or fashion here, because everybody's got a job to do, and there are some great outfitters out there. But what can happen is that outfitters can offer more.
And it was kind of funny to us because Keegan and I have talked about the idea of opening an outfit and doing all that type of stuff. And we had actually, 2 years ago, Keegan? We had...
Yeah, it was after the first year, season I moved out here.
We had talked about the idea of getting an outfit, opening an outfit, and actually talking to this rancher about getting all of his property and just paying him. All you got to do is pay him a little bit more than that block management pays him. And so that was something that we had come up with. So if I'm an actual outfitter, there's really good potential. I mean, I saw one of the biggest bucks I've ever seen in my life in those coolies. So you can't blame the outfitter for it. I would have done it if I was an outfitter, but the outfitter went to the rancher and offered him more money. And in today's day and age, you can't turn down that.
Well, especially these ranchers and farmers, that's their sole income is on what they can grow and what they can raise.
Right.
And, the block management programs are awesome because they open up public opportunity or public hunting access to us. And they're incentivized to do such. And they use that kind of as like a side business. It's, a little bit of extra income at the end of the year. But when an outfitter approaches them and says, hey, I know you're roughly making this much from the block management program. I'll offer you this much more. And it's kind of a no-brainer for most ranchers that do that.
Right, and a lot of these outfitters, they are good enough to those landowners that they will say, hey, if you want to do your hunting, you don't have to lose that to my lease. You can still go and take the bucks that you need to take.
Yeah.
It'd just be great, if we could work it around the schedule. But they work that kind of stuff out. When the block management program, it's tough because you're going to have people hunting your ground all the time.
Yeah, that you don't have the opportunity to go in knowing that it would just be yours.
You do sign over some control, and that can be difficult for some landowners.
Yeah.
And so when it comes down to it, if I was in this landowner's position, I would have done the same exact thing.
But you guys didn't find that out until the beginning of this season.
Right.
No.
So youth season, we went out and we did some hunting. And this particular chunk is in a chronic wasting disease area. So basically you have to take everything out, except for guts.
Guts are the only thing that can stay.
Yeah.
Right. So that's tricky when you're in these coulee systems that go really far back. I mean, taking out an entire deer is a lot. So it's discouraged a lot of people. So during the youth hunt, we're like, okay, we don't entirely want to do that, but let's go do that because I bet nobody else wants to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we drove out there one evening and we couldn't find any sign-in boxes. And we're like, what's happening? And we looked on OnX. And there's no more
I'll
block
say
management.
about 3/4 to 7/8 of that block management chunk was no longer open.
Yeah.
It was shrunk down to a much smaller area. There were some coulees still, but it was mostly farmland and
I'd say like
planted fields.
Yeah, maybe a mile wide, and so that makes it tricky to hunt, because when I'm hunting coulee systems, I property lines really make me nervous, especially when the neighboring property is leased by an outfitter, because that's their livelihood. If I shoot a deer on the state and it runs over to their place, I mean, I know if I was in that position, I had people hitting this tiny little chunk and they are not responsible about their fence lines and they shoot a deer and it comes over. That's just a hassle for the outfitter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That really makes it difficult. And it could potentially impact their clients too. So we talked about going out and still hunting that chunk, but it's so small that I just don't know if I'm comfortable with hunting it anymore. Yeah. So.
Well, we got lucky yesterday.
Yep.
And we talk all the time on here about go knock on doors.
Right.
Yep. Just go knock on a door. And we hiked all over some public access land right there next to this property and
hadn't seen anything.
Had not seen anything. And so it was, hey, I think we have a connection with this guy.
Yep. My dad went and set up his internet, and early in the season, he's like, that guy's a really nice guy. Maybe if all else fails, go knock on his door.
Well, and that guy, we've talked about it for the last couple of years, between actual hunting access to just shed hunting.
Yeah.
And looking for antlers on his place.
Right. And so I'm fully of the mentality where if I need to, I'll call anybody. I've had people go, you don't want to call him, you don't want to talk to him, he's rude and so on and so forth. I'm like, but what did you ask him for? Like, did you ask him to drive your side-by-side on his property? And the worst that they can say is no. Mm-hmm. Like, just because he told you no doesn't mean that he's rude.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this guy was very, very kind and generous.
Oh, yeah.
Super nice. We parked the rig, got out, and he was already at the door, opened the door and said, hi, how are you? How's it going? All that kind of stuff. And we introduced ourselves, and he was just as nice gets.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to be able to get that, not only for us to have used yesterday and a little bit today, it was also a relationship that hopefully you guys will be able to continue because of the respect that we are
He knows that we're not going out onto his property and tearing stuff up and being disrespectful. He knows that it doesn't affect him to have us on his property. And this morning when we were headed out, he hopped in his tractor and was coming down the road, and we did the whole slow down and roll down our windows, and he stopped in his tractor and opened up the door, and we did a little small talk there, and we went our separate ways. And he said that we can hunt it whenever we need to hunt it.
Yeah.
And he was super nice about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we had another landowner on one of the neighboring properties for him. I wasn't gonna call him at first. I'm like, let's hunt this first property we have, and if we see something over there, then I can call him. And we drove out there, and all of a sudden 3 deer popped up out in the CRP, and Keegan put the spotting scope on him and went, wow, that's a nice buck. So I'm like, well,
let's have
guess
this
I better
conversation.
call him. Yep.
Yeah.
So I called him, and he was a little more iffy, but it's not that he doesn't let people hunt. It's that he is letting people hunt, but he doesn't want to mess anybody up by letting extra people hunt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'd called him, and he said yes, go ahead. And so we got to hunt.
booked it. Sam got that gun ready again as fast could be. And we start hightailing it. I mean, I don't know. My legs felt it big time when we finally came to a stop. But it was definitely up and down, and down, and up,
When you're trying
running.
to cut off a deer like that, a deer that's on the move, you don't have time to navigate coulees or anything like
with
that.
the coulees, you don't know where they're at. Or
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
As soon
So
as you lose
still
that line
have
of
to
sight.
be quiet and slow, but at the same time, you have to be
Book it.
Stealthy.
hauling. Yeah.
Stealthy.
Well, and how far was he? We ranged him about
500.
500, 600?
He was about 600 yards away
Yeah.
from us, and that
So
was
we
just
booked it.
too far for
Yeah.
us. But
We booked it down to 160 when he popped. 170
yeah, he was 160 to 170
when he popped
yards
back
away.
out. And luckily we were kind of in a spot where
Yeah.
we didn't know where he was going to be. We saw the does and we knew that he was chasing the does. It was just like, when is he going to pop out?
Where is he? Yeah, and he definitely came around. He caught us with our pants down, to be frank, because we were all standing watching those
We were
does.
expecting him in front of us, and he came out from the left, and we were not prepared for that.
Yeah, we were watching those does, kind of working around, and we're talking a little bit, in a hushed voice. And it's like, all right, he may be with them. He may just be lower, and we can't see.
Does had us. Hey.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh my
we couldn't
gosh.
move.
Yeah, and so we were trying to move down the coulee a little bit so we weren't silhouetted at all. And I think that if we would have stayed on top of the coulee, we probably could have gotten set up better.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we were standing there watching those does, and I just, for whatever reason, just happened to look to my left, and my eyes got huge and went, oh crud, there he is.
There he is.
I remember I grabbed Jess and spun her hard because you can't miss this deer.
Yeah.
He's right there.
Physically, I'm like, why are you moving me? I don't have a rifle.
But it was Sam, tell us a little bit about how you were feeling in that moment, because we had rock, paper, scissors,
We did rock, paper, scissors.
and I lost twice.
Yes.
Yesterday. I'm horrible.
So the first thing that I was trying to, like he said, it was really quick, so we had to figure out a accurate way to get a shot on him, because like Jess said, we weren't on top of the coulee, and at this point in time he was kind of above us. Would you say he was a little bit above us?
Yep, and we were on the side hill too, which made it, if you've ever shot off a bipod, like you have to sit there and fiddle with the bipod and make one side way longer,
and
to
it was
get
way too fast for us to do that. So Keegan grabbed his pack. I practiced laying down prone on a pack, but not sitting up with a pack. So,
and I'm going to interject really quick. Sam and I have actually never rifle hunted before. So this is not just our first mule deer hunt. It's our first rifle hunt.
Yeah, and I forget that.
Yeah, we both forget it.
It's very, very different.
Very. Yeah.
But once we got the pack up and I went to go shoot the first time, my ammo did not go off. The firing pin went off, but
just a click.
So I had to rack that out and get another one. And thankfully, the deer did not move. Well, he moved a little bit.
He moved a little bit, but he wasn't like spooked.
Right.
He was just
he was
doing
looking
his
our
normal movement.
He was looking our direction, going, that's a weird looking bush. I don't recall that being there.
Those are not very hot does. And they keep moving.
Yeah.
So what did I do? Put them in my 200-yard pen.
Yep.
I think, and you told me to
pop it up.
Yeah.
Pop it up a little bit.
So I have never shot my rifle with the different notches for yardage. So my rifle, it's just your crosshairs and you hold over
Yeah.
for whatever you need to
Mhm.
hold over for. And Sam had told me I have notches, but I forgot that
In
she
the
had
moment,
notches.
In the
we
moment,
were
yeah.
very
And
serious.
our adrenaline too, just walking and running and
Mhm.
climbing those coulees on our way there. My heart rate, I mean, I
Mhm.
couldn't slow it down if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, as many deep breaths as I took, and as fast as he came out, and how excited we all were, it was a tough
Mhm.
shot and a
Yeah.
tough call for I think all of us.
Yeah.
But
Yep. And so I told her to hold what?
2
Two,
inches.
Said
2
2
inches above his back.
Yeah.
And she did that with her 200 yard.
so yep, it was I finally got a round off, and it was a clear miss. And after that, we just took off after him.
Yeah.
The buck,
Because
the buck
he-
kind of lost interest in us, and
Yeah.
he decided to start trot. Kind of not really
Yeah,
running
he
away.
wasn't running. He just trotted up over
Mhm.
the hill.
Even after I took the shot.
Yeah, so I stood up and I'm booking it towards him, and I looked back, and Amy, Sam, and Keegan are all just kind of milling around right there. Like,
Well, I had
what just
pulled-
happened?
I
Yeah.
had pulled
Yeah.
like a cowboy move and
Yeah.
had
Quick
gotten my
draw that
rifle
thing,
up,
yeah.
but he had already.
gone
He'd
over
crossed,
the
yeah.
top. Yeah.
Well, he had even moved in a way where his rear end was.
Right.
To us,
He was full
and
facing
was
away.
off. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So-
There's no shot.
Yeah, we took off, and we tried to get eyes on him, and we got over the top where we could see everything, and we just had no idea where he
He was
went.
gone.
Mhm.
Yeah, and all of a sudden Keegan goes, I see him. There he is. And we're like, what? And Keegan points out this deer that's what?
He was
Almost 700
He was
yards
about
away.
700 yards away, down in
Just-
the little creek bottom.
Yeah, just standing there.
Yeah.
We think he was standing. He might have been bedded. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he was not a care in the world.
I would say he was bedded just for the fact of me and Amy sat up on that hill and kind of watched
he
everything
never
go down.
moved.
He didn't move an
Yeah.
inch.
Nope.
He moved his head a little bit,
Yeah.
but never
He never moved. And so he had to have been bedded.
Yeah.
But anyways, so we took off after that deer, Sam and I did, and boy, we were moving quick.
They were.
What do we call it? You guys were track stars.
You were
Yeah,
track stars.
I'm gonna tell you guys, I kind of felt like Rambo there for a little bit. I mean, we were Sam was hauling. I had to catch up. So Sam was hauling, and let me tell you, we were straight up doing the track star, like over the hurdles, over sagebrush type thing.
Mhm.
I'm like, I felt so young.
We came to a ditch. We came to a ditch that we had to crawl across using like the paneling.
Yep, there was a panel fence line that was right there, and an irrigation ditch that was really deep.
And really wide.
And there was this
Mhm.
metal panel that was going over it. So Sam's like, we're going to cross just like this. I'm like, yes, ma'am. And so Sam crawled on it and crawled over, and I'm like, all right, well, I held Sam, so cross my fingers. And I went over it too, and we continued to haul
Mhm.
over there. And we got, what, like,
I ranged you. I was
I
constantly
think that-
ranging you guys. You were about 450 yards
Mhm.
away from that deer down at the
and
bottom.
we kind of stopped, and, you know, we're just
Regroup.
looking
Yeah.
at him, kind
Yeah.
of trying to decide what our next move should be. And I look over to my right, up on this other little drainage, and there's 2 does and a buck coming out. And I look
Really
at
nice.
I look
He was
at
a
that
nice
buck
one.
in my
Yeah.
binos, and I'm like, I can just see antlers, and I know he's a shooter for sure. Sam, there's a buck. And I don't know what it was. I think you were looking somewhere else, but you couldn't find him for a little bit. And so I kind of guided you onto him, and you're like, oh, okay, and got on him. And what happened is her bipod was too tall. So she had to like raise her body up somehow, and I didn't have my pack. So I stuck my leg underneath
worked.
her hips, and it raised her up just enough. At this point, like we talked about, we had just gotten done Rambo running across this flat, and we're tired, we're breathing heavy, our heart rate is everywhere. And so I'm telling Sam, okay, just get your breathing under control, just squeeze, take your time, this is your range. And so she did, she just squeezed, and all of a sudden, tink.
And we were back up off the hill.
We were
going, why isn't she shooting? Why isn't she shooting?
We watched all of this go down, and we're watching this deer, and he's standing perfectly broadside for probably a good minute or two.
I mean, I told Sam multiple times, I'm like, you have time.
Yeah.
You have time. Take your time. His does aren't spooking. He's not spooking.
Mm-hmm.
Take your time. And so I told you after that went tink and the round didn't go off, told you, okay, just a practice round. Make this next shot even better than that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you put in another one and you put that other one in. You're taking your time. And for whatever reason, he just decided he had enough.
By the time I got him back in my scope, and I don't know if it was me re-racking a shell or what, but his butt was turned towards us, and I'm like, okay, this is not an ethical shot, not taking it, and he was over the ridge.
Yeah, and watching the doe, one of those does was with him. She got a little wary or something. I can't remember exactly. I don't know. She lost interest and just decided to walk up the hill, and we think they're going into like that pre-rut phase. Yeah. And so that doe went over the top, and he was like, oh, well, okay, if she's going, I'll go with.
Yeah, and I knew he was a nice buck just from kind of watching him, but I try not to focus on the antlers really at all. I say, okay, that's a shooter, and that's all. And he went and got silhouetted, and I would have mounted that deer. He was a very nice deer, and I told Sam later in the night, I'm like, can I tell you something without you, like, throwing up?
She did too, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, she's like, yeah. And so I told her that. But I wanted spirits to still be high and be like, we're in these deer. These are the big bucks we're looking for.
So luckily, during that whole situation, that bedded deer, that bedded buck, which I would say we all agree that deer had to have been
bedded. I would put money on it.
Yeah.
He never moved.
Never.
No.
It never disrupted him. It never, like, that whole situation. So all of a sudden we see you guys pop up and hightail it to right around 200 yards, right?
Yeah,
we were at about
250.
Okay.
Yeah, 250.
Yeah, because I was ranging you guys and ranging the deer and back and forth, and had my calculator out, doing the math, and it's like, all right, they're right about 250 right in there.
Yeah.
And I'll let you guys continue with it.
It was getting dark. We were about 20 minutes from 30 minutes maybe from shooting light.
Yeah, right about
that last buck.
So we got up there and we came right over this little ridge, and Sam got set up, and all you could see was the top of his back and his neck and his head, and you could see like a little bit more, like, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 inches down from his spine. And so we got you set up, and I was just hoping you could see him. Luckily,
he was very well camouflaged. Besides his antlers, those were high toes.
Yeah, that was it. And so finally, Sam got set up, and her bipod was perfect.
Yeah.
But again, it was too tall for her. So I went and stuck my leg underneath her. And once I got my leg underneath her, I'm like, okay, cool, everything's gonna be cool.
My elbow was too high. So she puts her bino harness under my elbow.
Yeah.
With my binos in it.
Yeah.
So she couldn't watch my shot.
I had the rangefinder out.
Which was important to have at that point in time. Yeah.
And I was trying to watch the shot through my rangefinder. That was a little tricky, I'd have to say.
Yeah. While everything else. Yeah.
Yep. And she shot, and I don't entirely know where you shot. I think you shot like above him. But
with those pins and with that,
he had the bank right behind him.
It was so hard, and the brush, the sage, the what else was in there?
Oh my gosh,
bushes.
Yeah. So much was in there, but I think you hit the bank behind him, the wet bank behind him, and I could have swore I heard that thwomp sound. And I told Sam, I'm like, I think you hit him. Because he did that whole put the head back when a deer's going down and dying. And I thought that that's what I saw, but looking back at it, we still thought he was standing. If he was bedded, that was probably him rearing to get up.
Right.
So,
and then he twirled around.
Right.
He did a little.
Yep. And so he started, he was all of a sudden up, and I couldn't see everything through my rangefinder. And because I'm, shaking like a leaf because we just ran the mile. So I'm looking, and all of a sudden I just see him walking. And I'm like, Sam, we gotta go. Sam, we gotta go. Yeah. And so we're going. I'm like, we need to get a follow-up shot on him. And he starts going up a hill. And he's running up this hill. I'm like...
With no problem?
Yeah, I'm like, what's happening? I swear you hit him. And so, Sam, we had talked about earlier how sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And Sam was talking about shooting off a friend's back.
I think that was more of a joke, but...
Yeah.
But it ended up happening.
So Sam's like... Get on all fours, let me shoot off your back. I'm like, yes, ma'am. I'm like, sure thing. So I get on all fours, and she shoots
I think at
off
that
my
point
back.
in time, between the hills and everything, the rolling hills,
Yeah.
that bino where we crept up to, it was just not enough, and we didn't have time to adjust it. So I was like, okay, like her back's pretty tall. So,
yeah, right.
And honestly, I was as accurate as it could have been. I mean,
Right. Well, and at that point, I said he was hit. So at that point, you do what you have to do to get around in him to put him down.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, whatever we got to do to get a shot off and get another round in him. And so I got on all fours, and the only bad part is I'm breathing so heavy. And I'm like, there's no way. Her scope's got to be like floating up and down. And so I'm like...
Holding your breath
and look at the deer while it's on my back, and I don't think my ears have recovered.
I owe you for that one for sure.
Yeah, that 6'5" has a little bit of a bark
It
to
does,
it.
yeah. I mean, I'd say so when it's right above your head. It does, I'll tell you.
From our vantage point, at that point in time, what we see is a buck go clear up the coulee, like straight up.
Yeah, a fatally wounded deer is not going to do that. A wounded deer isn't going to do that. It's not going to, when it has nice, clear, flat, open stuff, it's not going to go up the one hill.
Yeah. And we all got together. We canvassed the area up the hill.
Absolutely.
We canvassed down below it.
We gridded the riverbank, kind of where he was.
No
there
blood.
Was no blood, nothing.
Not a drop.
So we hiked what did it end up being?
That was
2 miles back.
Yeah, it was about 2 miles back. Yeah.
I'm sure we probably ended up doing a little bit more because
meandering to find the fence line.
Yeah, it was a little spotty trying to get back there.
Thank you, Onyx, for helping us back in the dark. But it was kind of one of those situations where we got back and it was, I don't know, you kind of do that processing of everything that happened, and to put that much effort into trying to find a speck of blood and not finding anything, we confidently left believing 100% in a miss.
With how close that bank was to his back, the fact that it was a wet bank too, it was a cut bank where that water had cut into it, it was a wet bank. That would have made noise. That plop sound. Yeah. It needs something solid but not dry.
Yeah.
And because there was no dust that kicked up, but looking at that bank, it's wet.
Yeah.
So that would have made sense.
The tricky thing with that too is you said you got a range on them. It's when they're in that thicker, nastier stuff down that river bottom, it's especially if he was bedded like we all think he was. It's tough to get an accurate range when you can only see so much of them.
Right.
Well,
you
and
could
that's
be ranging behind.
What I did is I was trying to range him, but what I ultimately did is I ranged the bank right behind him because I knew that was going to be a solid range.
Okay.
So, and I had Sam telling me to get a solid range. I'm like, yes, ma'am.
I said, I want the exact range.
Yeah.
And I want you rounding up. I want to know the
Mhm.
exact range.
Yeah.
I gave her the exact range, not of the deer.
Yeah.
Big.
See, I didn't know this. So now
Yeah.
she's leaving out details.
She can't hit me because I'm on a podcast.
I think even in that situation, like we came to hunt, and we've talked about this last night, and we talked about it this morning. We came to hunt,
And we have hunted our butts off.
we have
guys
have
have
learned a
definitely
lot.
earned it.
Hopefully, we will continue hunting
Yes.
this afternoon and this evening, and come up with something instead of eating tag soup.
Yes.
Yep.
But it is still. We came to hunt, not just to kill.
Right.
Yes.
And it has definitely been that. The lessons that we have learned coming to a different area, coming to a different kind of hunting, learning so much. I mean, golly, those trekking poles are amazing.
Oh my gosh, I don't care what
Best
anybody
investment.
says.
The best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are coming and doing this kind of hunt, get trekking
Yes,
poles.
Absolutely.
Because I feel it when I don't use my trekking poles.
You also figure out, us preparing where we live, there's no preparation for altitude changes.
There's not.
What was it?
terrain,
we
nothing.
looked it up the other day. I was coming from 565 feet
Mm-hmm.
to what were we hunting?
We were hunting anywhere between
6
5
to 7,000.
Yeah, 6 to 7,000. Some of those peaks were getting close to 8,
Yeah.
but we didn't. I don't think we crested more than
Yeah.
7-1.
But it was still just that you can't prepare for all of it. We a couple of times had to readjust packs. We had to figure out what
We really needed it and what we did not need in our packs.
Uh-huh.
So by the end of today, we were taking out everything
Yes.
that we knew we weren't going to
Yes.
use.
there was just so much has gone into the past couple of days that it's such a value
It really is.
to move forward, not just in coming back out here again, but applying it to where
Just
we
the learning
are.
curve
Mhm.
of everything
Yeah.
is.
And we've
It's
talked-
humbling for
is.
sure.
It is.
It is absolutely
And we-
humbling. But back to the hunting side of it, about like you said, we may have not killed anything, but I'll tell you right now, the hunt we did last night has been one of the funnest and most exciting hunts that I have ever done. And it was, I look back at it and you have that guilt and that doubt of, I missed a really nice buck, but I still had so much fun. And
Right,
then
and
I
there
look back and I mean, it's helpful because it's not, for
Right.
nothing.
And when you say I missed that buck, for me, it's we missed that buck.
Yeah.
Because
We're
had
one
I
big
been
group. Yeah.
behind your rifle,
Yeah.
I was the one who told you to hold like this.
Mhm.
So if I would have been behind your rifle, I would have missed. And
Yeah.
so it's a we missed that buck.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever one person's
When you're
fault.
working as a team.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, there's always something that could have been different. So
So we're going to close up this podcast. We will continue when we have finished our hunt. We'll probably honestly continue at a later date and come together and finish having these conversations. But we've got to get it back out there like that. The goal is to fill a tag. So we're going to go kick some ass and go fill some tags and
give it all we've got this last 24 hours.
So it was kind of funny yesterday night because we were sitting in the pickup glassing. And what did you say, Amy? I'm not going to say it. You can say it. Go
what
ahead.
was it?
I can't.
Oh,
I can't
was it
say
today?
that.
Was it the doze one that I said?
No, it was wow, I almost feel like
Oh, yeah.
east.
And I was joking because I had not hunted like that out east, but it crushed your soul.
It really crushed my
your soul.
when you said that. And so I had said, well, I guess we got to go on another death march and not 5 minutes later,
It was
we
karma.
see this
I
buck,
know.
and
I
we are hitting
Hauling,
the ground
yeah.
running.
It was
We
karma.
did
I
not
did
close
that.
the windows to the truck. We did not grab our cell phones.
I didn't have my gloves
We didn't
or
grab
anything.
packs.
Like it
I
was
I was the
running.
only one to grab a pack out of
Yeah.
the truck, which
Yeah.
Thank you, Keegan. We had
Yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, it was
Yeah.
as that joke. Amy said, "Yeah, I feel like we're Eastern hunting right now," and Jess was like, "Well, looks like we got to go on an 8-mile death march now."
And we did.
And we get back to the truck after all this went down, and I checked my phone, see what the mileage count was for the day. And I'll be damned, it was about 8-9 miles.
Yeah.
And it was all
So you're
accumulated
welcome.
up.
You're,
So
thank you so much.
Jess got her revenge.
You
I
did.
Yep.
You did. I will not say that ever
Thanks
again.
for punching my soul.
Well, thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the next one where we hopefully have some great results and a safe trip back home.